From Hannibal's sip 2,000 years ago to astronauts drinking it in space. It's a powerful sensation.
Perhaps we're going to go back to the 1800s when soda was an occasional drink, not something you would drink constantly every day. But also, back to the 1800s when they had all these varieties of flavours that we're still going to want it as a treat. We're still going to carry on drinking it.
Tristan Donovan on our enduring love affair with fizz. And we're going deeper into soft drinks history for this week's story from the Ark of Taste, our journey through Slow Food's catalogue of the world's most endangered foods. And it's the story of the cola nut, an ingredient from Sierra Leone, West Africa.
The people that have used cola in their daily lives for thousands of years have not really made any money out of what is probably one of the most popular brand names in the English language. In fact, the second most popular word after OK.
When Simon Coley set out to make a soft drink, his research into the original 19th century recipes for cola led him to the original source of bitterness, the cola nut, and travels to Sierra Leone, onto the southeast of the country and into the Gola rainforest.
It's actually a seed, grows in a pod, very high up in the canopy in the rainforest.
Where nearby villagers from the Boma and Tiwe communities gather this wild ingredient.
Men of the village go into the jungle with very, very long sticks, and they use them to hook the stem of the pod and tear it down from the canopy. It drops on the floor of the forest. When you open the pod, they're about the size of two hands clasped together. You're presented with 4 or 5, maybe half a dozen small cola nuts. They're about the size of a chestnut.
And for the communities around the forest, the nut represents food, medicine, and an important feature of rituals, including welcoming ceremonies, if you're welcomed.
If you visit one of these villages in the Gola jungle and you're not presented with cola nut as a visitor, you should be worried.
Whole cola nuts are often just carried loose, tucked inside a pocket, because it's a stimulant containing caffeine. A small bite can provide energy.
Because they have no public transport and very few motorised vehicles, they walk everywhere. So when they're going on a walk, which could be 5 to 10 kilometres to market, they chew cola. It's an appetite suppressant too, so it helps them go the journey. And the tradition is to chew it, just using your eye teeth to take a bit of the nut off and chew between your molars. You have to bite it very cautiously unless you're an experienced cola eater. And the initial sensation is incredible bitterness, and as you chew it more, it gets sweeter.
For hundreds of years, the Western world has understood the attraction of the cola nut, and it's travelled far from the Gola rainforest.
Since the 1500s, Europeans have been, in a small, more recently a large way, consuming cola. And this is where it originates from. The people who discovered cola and use it in their daily rituals and lives have never really made a cent out of that transaction.
It became an ingredient in the original colas, and then at the turn of the last century started to disappear.
It was difficult for them to get hold of enough cola, and they replaced it with caffeine.
But in Sierra Leone, it's still used to make a drink.
And it's crushed and steeped as a sort of a tea. A small amount of sugar and malt is added. It's a really challenging drink to consume.
The early 90s in Sierra Leone witnessed the start of a 10-year civil war. Communities, economies, and farming practices were destroyed. Many stopped harvesting the cola nut. Using it again as an ingredient in a soft drink and generating funds for community schools and farms is one way Simon Coley and others are helping to improve Sierra Leone's future.
Also that enabled them to rehabilitate some of their forest farms that were all destroyed in the 10-year war. It's never going to be a large proportion of the Sierra Leonean GDP, but we think it's a good
right onto
example
Ranmore Common Road.
of a business model that can support these villages in a way that they have control over their own destiny.
The food program was presented with Fizz by Dan Saladino and produced in Bristol, Sparkle by Anne-Marie Bullock. The comedian John Finnemore presents With Great Pleasure. It's coming up in a couple minutes after the news.
BBC, for making us laugh.
You may have noticed it was summer on Wednesday. How did you get? I'm British. I put on a suit and tie and pretended it wasn't happening.
For making us cry.
With the calf's last breath, she knows that her battle is lost.
For taking us to the edge of our seats.
I'm delighted to announce that the winner of the Great British Bake Off is...
For all of us, the BBC, on radio, TV and online.
BBC News at 4 o'clock. A former City trader has become the first person to be convicted of rigging LIBOR, the interbank lending rate. During the 10-week trial at Southwark Crown Court, Tom Hayes claimed he hadn't realised he was doing anything wrong and that his managers had been aware of his activities. Jonty Blue reports.
The LIBOR interest rate is used to set the price of billions of pounds worth of financial instruments. It was supposed to be impossible to rig and a true reflection of the cost of bank lending. But when the credit crunch struck, it became apparent that the rate was being rigged. While working at UBS, a Swiss bank, and Citigroup, an American one, Mr. Hayes conspired with dealers at other banks to rig the rate in his favour. At first, when questioned by the Serious Fraud Office, Mr. Hayes admitted the offences, but then changed his mind and pleaded not guilty, claiming to have only admitted the offences to avoid extradition to the United States. But after a 10-week trial, the jury found him guilty of all 8 charges, each of which carries a maximum sentence of 10 years.
The way Wiltshire Police handled an allegation that the former Prime Minister, Sir Edward Heath, was involved in child sexual abuse is to be investigated by the Independent Police Complaints Commission. It's to look into allegations that a case was dropped when a person involved made claims against Sir Edward in the 1990s. Share prices have plummeted on the Athens stock market on its first day of trading after weeks of closure. The main index was down more than 20% and shares in major Greek banks fell by 30%. Rail workers for First Great Western have announced a 72-hour strike over the August bank holiday weekend at the end of the month. The RMT union is in dispute over the introduction of the new Hitachi intercity trains. 4 people on a tourist bus in central London have been taken to hospital after its roof was ripped off when it hit an overhanging branch in Bloomsbury. One passenger said the collision sounded like a bomb going off. No one is thought to have suffered life-threatening injuries. BBC News.
Brian Cox, Robin Ince and their guests look at the signs of speed in this week's Infinite Monkey Cage. It's coming up at 4:30. But now on Radio 4, the comedy writer and star of Radio 4's Cabin Pressure, John Finnemore, presents his favourite pieces of writing and comedy to the audience at the BBC Radio Theatre.
Hello and welcome to With Great Pleasure. And let me straight away use all of that great pleasure to introduce 2 of the finest and funniest actors in the land. My sitcom Cabin Pressure was immeasurably improved by their McGreen's performers Carolyn and Mr. Burling, but that is the very least of their accomplishments. Please welcome my friends Stephanie Cole and Geoffrey Whitehead! Stephanie Cole, of course, among many other wonderful parts over a long, not that long, career.
It's long.
Well, medium long.
Okay.
Plays my pretend mother in Cabin Pressure. The not as formidable as she seems, but pretty formidable Carolyn.
It was lovely because it gave me the opportunity to vent that side of my character that is absolutely Carolyn Knapp-Shappin. It also enabled me to be your mother, which I just have had the best time doing without sounding. No, I have. How smarmy can you get? But I know. It was a joy.
In 1,000 feet.
You should compare notes with
Turn
my
right.
real mother. I'm not sure. I'm not sure that was a joy from start to finish. And Geoffrey Whitehead, of course, plays the furious and often drunken Mr. Burling.
Where's my chalice?
Turn right onto Ranmore Common Road.
That is his hunting cry. So, to get us warmed up, let's start with 2 very short yet co-authored poems. The first was begun by William Wordsworth